Hey guys, in this video we have the Creality Ender-3 MAX Neo. So the Ender-3 name continues to evolve, and the MAX stands for a larger volume, with Neo being the latest iteration. So I am pretty excited to see what this printer is all about. So in this video we're going to unbox it, set it up, and do some prints. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. Let's get started. Alright, so Creality continues to impress us with new printers, and it just seems like we got the S1 version here recently, but now we have the Neo versions. Now I think this is more going to be on the side of budget conscious people, so think of it more as the version 2 upgrade. So this is the box that the Max comes in. We got a picture here of what the printer looks like, the dimensions of the box in centimeters, and I'm not too sure about the weight, but it feels about 25 pounds or so. So let's go ahead and open it up. So this is a pretty large size box, and as you guys can see, everything is packed very well. So this is what we see on top. We got the manual, actually after sales card, and the user manual, which is very nicely laid out. A breakdown of what every part is on the printer, the parameters, contents included, and then our assembly instructions starting with 1. So yeah, Creality usually does a great job with these manuals, and no exception here for the MAX Neo. So everything is packed in this soft black foam. So we do get a spool of filament, looks like in white PLA, and I do like that it's a spool, and it is 200 grams. We got part of the spool holder, and it's the pivoting kind, which is nice. And what's great about this, it just clips on, and the other part here where the spool rides on literally installs just like that by just twisting it on. I really do like these spool holders because they move out of the way when you want to kind of tuck the printer away for storage. So in this pocket here, we have the screen. This is not a touch screen. This is why we have this rotary knob here. That is what controls the UI. And also there's a bracket on the back that unclips pretty easily. Yeah, very nice build, and this is where you're gonna plug it in. Here we have a box, and there's a few things in here. Mostly this bag with Allen wrenches, bolts, zip ties, snippers, clean out needle, SD card adapter with the SD card in it, bolts for the installation, and things like that. We also get a power cable. This is a US tape, and a spatula that is somewhat sharpened. All right, so that looks like everything on the top layer. And you guys probably can't see this great, but yeah, we have the gantry, which is the upper portion, all nestled up with the base underneath that. So let's go ahead and pull it up. So it does appear to be tethered to the base with these wires, so they do have to come out together. But yeah, this is the base, and I really like these red accents everywhere. That looks really cool, and I think this is part of the whole Neo series. Very nice little touches. And right off the bat, everything looks quite familiar and somewhat refreshed. And we're going to take a closer look at all the details here shortly. I'm going to go ahead and move this out of the way. And you guys can see everything was packed very well. Lots of good foam and protection. And Creality's always done a great job with that. Alright, so I got the base upside down on the table, and the reason it's like that because I want to see what is beneath these covers. And you guys can see the underneath is very clean and nicely constructed. This is the drawer here, the main board looks like, and then our power supply is over here with some venting. So let's go ahead and see what we got here. So there's a clean out needle taped to the box of the snippers. We get a pack of long bolts, and this is going to be for connecting the gantry to the base. Some zip ties, some spare parts. It looks like a nozzle and some clips for the PTF tube couplers. Here we get a USB adapter with the micro SD card in it. We also get a little baggie of tools, and that includes a set of Allen wrenches, a couple ended open wrenches. This one's for the nozzle. This one here is for adjusting rollers and also to tighten certain nuts. Also, we do get a little mini flat screwdriver. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull all these little bolts out, and we'll see what's underneath. let's go ahead and open this one up. All metal here, pretty good thickness. And we'll go ahead and pull this one off, which does have a fan attached to it. So we'll just have to set it here to the side. All right, guys, so let's take a closer look here at the main board. So this is a Creality version 4.2.2. You guys can see our stepper drivers there, and they are integrated, but they are heat sinked, and also they are the 2208 TMC drivers. So there's quite a few wires going out of the board, and we can see there's like a little cutout in the channel where they travel through, and they are protected, which is nice to see. The power supply is Creality branded, 24 volts, 14.6 amp, which is 350 watts. All the connections are nice and crimped and nicely routed everywhere. So yeah, everything looks clean and what's expected out of Creality. So I'm gonna put these covers back and we'll start the assembly. So putting the printer together is actually quite simple. If we go to the manual, we can see that step 1 shows us that we're gonna put the gantry on top of the base, and then there's 2 bolts on each side. They're gonna mount it. So these are the bolts, and we can see they're quite long. So if we look at the base, we can see a cutout here on the side, and this is where the gantry side is going to actually slide down into. Same thing on the other side. Now, one thing you need to look at, if your wires or cables are all nice and happy. Now, mine look like they're somewhat tangled or twisted up, so I think I need to flip this thing around a couple times to kind of get rid of these tangles. There we go. That looks like it's pretty happy and straight. And then we're just going to slide down into those grooves on both sides of the printer. So mine's not easily going down because distance between here is too short, or at least initially. So I'm going to go ahead and raise this whole x-axis up. There is a belt on top that I'm turning to bring it up. Or you can just turn the coupler here also to bring it up and down. All right, so now that I got it squeezed over, it seemed to go down to where it needs to go, and it's kind of holding itself. And actually it does look like that I need to go down even more. So I'm going to go ahead and just tap it down. Okay, yeah, so you do want it to sit right down at the table, looks like, or the flat surface. Okay, so that is the correct way, as the bolts are going in easily. And if we go to the other side, hopefully you guys can see, maybe it's pretty much the same thing here. And we're going to grab the large wrench and run these bolts all the way down. So I'm not going to tighten them up all the way, just in case. We'll go ahead and run the other side down. And yeah, guys, because this printer pretty much is pre-built and all we got to do is just connect a few things, this makes it really friendly for anyone that is getting started, which wasn't always the case for Creality, especially back in the day. It was more like a kit that you have to assemble. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and snug this side up really good. So you don't have to go crazy, as this type of connection is quite strong, and because it's grooved in, it's very stable, which, by the way, I love this design, and just more rigid for the whole Z-axis going up. Back to the other side, snug these up, and we are done with step 1. So for step 2, we're going to be installing the screen. The mount does clip off, and if we look at it, we can see we got some T-nuts with bolts, and these are actually going to line up right here into the channel in the front. So the first thing we need to do is cut the T-nuts loose so these can move around, and all we're going to do is just line them up into these 2 grooves. And so these 2 will go on the bottom, and this one will go on top, and just like this. But yeah, once it falls in, all we got to really do is unscrew the bolt and then screw it back in where the T-nut will turn in the channel and then lock in. So if it doesn't work out the first time, just keep trying it, just unscrew it and then screw it back in, and the T-nut will turn and lock in. So once you do all 3, your bracket should be nice and tight in there. So we can grab our wire that comes out from the bottom and we can connect it to our display. Just like that, and then this should just clip right in going down, and that's it. We're pretty much done with the display, and you can adjust it to go back or front however you like it. I think mine here looks pretty good. And so for step 3, we're going to install our spool holder, which is quite simple. It just clips on the side. And for step 4, it's asking us to look at the voltage setting on the back of the printer, and that's pretty much all the steps in the manual. So not too much more information about the assembly, but we're going to go a little bit more in depth because there's quite a few important things that we need to adjust and check. So let's go ahead and put on our spool holder, which, by the way, clips on right in the back here. And before we do that, we can go ahead and connect this Z motor, and there's a plug here that's right next to it, and it says Z. And actually, guys, on the other side we have the same thing. So yeah, that's pretty much the extent of plugging things in, including the screen. But as far as the spool holder, basically if we clip it on, and it simply just sits on the rail and clips down, and you can move it farther or closer away. And we do have a nice little rubber foot there. And so your spool will go on here, and then it will feed up to the filament detector. Now if you want, you can flip this around to the other side, which might make more sense because we have wires here up front, and kind of move this thing more closer to the motor here, right underneath the motor, because it does go all the way under there. And I think I do prefer it this way better, and then when you tuck it away, it really tucks away nicely as the spool just kind of folds right behind the bed. I think I prefer it this way, but we'll see how that turns out as we print. Now in the manual, it did want us to go straight here to the back and check our voltage, which hopefully you guys can see. There's a little switch right there. And ours is set to 230, which we need to change it to 115. Move the tab over to the other side, and now we can see 115 under there. So yeah, make sure you don't forget to do that before you power on the printer. And as you guys can see, it's not very hard to put this thing together. Adjust a few bolts through the side, a couple plugs to plug in the screen, and it's good to go. So yeah, very great for beginners. But we do need to check a few things that are quite important, which are going to be the rollers on the bed and also the belts on the X and Y, and the hot end itself has rollers also. So let's start with the bed, and we'll probably have to go to the side here, but yeah, you can see there's some rollers under there, and there are 3 of them. So there's 3 stationary and then 3 adjustable on the other side. So adjustable ones do have eccentric nuts, and I'm going to go ahead and move the screen out of the way so we can reach them better. But what we're going to do is we're going to just stick our hand under there, kind of roll them around and see how tight they are. And right away I can tell that the middle one here is completely loose. The one in the back is too tight. The one in the front is way too tight. So you're going to grab this wrench that was included, and what we're going to do is we're going to turn the eccentric nut to loosen the roller. So you want both sides of the rollers to kind of just barely squeeze around, and you should be able to turn them in one spot, kind of like a little burnout with some friction. And so this one actually feels good. So the bottom line is you want to try to get as loose as possible, but not wobble on the bed. So and it will take a little bit back and forth until you can get that right. And actually, guys, I noticed that the middle roller actually adjusts on the other side. And see if we can adjust the center roller. So when they do have 3 rollers like this, it's a little more tricky. You know, keep checking and adjusting, and eventually you'll get it. And I think mine is pretty good right there. And if you move it back and forth, you should have a really smooth and even roll. If you have any kind of jumping or feels funny, you know, keep checking your rollers and adjusting them. And as long as you're not too tight, you should be good. And also if you're too loose, you'll know by your bed moving around. So we also need to check our rollers on the X-axis, which is this hot end here, and mine are way too tight, and when I move it I can hear a lot of jerkiness and really hard tension. So the adjustable eccentric nut is on the bottom, so I'm going to go ahead and loosen it until these rollers feel pretty good. Okay, so I'm a little too loose now, and looks like maybe right there is pretty good. And sure enough, that feels much better. Now I can still feel a little bit of bumpiness, and that's because these things were tightened so hard and they've kind of indented a little flat spot on the wheels. So over time, as it runs around, it will kind of go away. But I'm going to loosen mine just a little more to see if I can get rid of that completely. Okay, yeah, that feels much better. So I'm very loose right now, but I'm not wobbling. And this is where you want to be for that perfect roll where it's really smooth. Now another place we can adjust is on the sides here. We got a couple rollers on the outside and then an adjustable one on the inside. Same thing for this side. Now these are not as critical unless they're really tight and you can't move them. You want to adjust them. So on mine, this side is pretty good and this other side is decent too, but I think it needs to be loosened a bit. All right, yeah, that does feel a little better. And this side is still good too. So yeah, just remember that you don't have to get this side perfect, as we do have dual Z axes and we're tethered, and the whole Z just moves very slow and not very much. So yeah, get them as close as you can, but don't worry about it too much. But yeah, other than that, that's all our wheels. So let's flip around to the front. So you do want to check your belts also, and we've got a tensioner here up front for the Y, and you don't want this to be too tight but also not too loose, because this bed is pretty big and it's glass, so a little tighter than looser for the Y axis. And you also have a little hole here through the top where you can see how your pulley's lining up. And for the X, we have a tensioner here which also can be loosened and tightened, and for the X I definitely like to keep mine pretty loose. And you want to be really careful, because with these knobs you can't really feel how much tension you're putting on there, and these belts don't really like being over tightened. So just very slight tightness where there's no slop, and you should have very smooth movement back and forth. But yeah, that's pretty much all of the things that needs to be adjusted. And as you guys see there, it's not too hard to get this thing going and get started out of the box. So I am pretty excited to power this thing on, but before we do that, let's go ahead and take a closer look at all the features and details of the MAX Neo. Alright, so yeah, this Ender-3 MAX is quite a decent sized printer, so you will need some room for it, not only for the base, but it is quite tall also. And a lot of that has to do with the print volume, which is 300 by 300 and 320 tall. Also, looking at the front, you guys can see how much this Y channel sticks out past the printer, which is quite interesting. So on the top, we don't have much going on. I do like how clean it is, and we don't have, a spool holder up here sticking up. That's really nice. We do have just normal aluminum channels, 2040s and 2020. Flipping around to the back, you guys can see we got dual Z-axis lead screws, but more importantly, there's a belt between them which tethers them together, and so if one turns, the other one turns together with it. And this is a great design. And the brackets that hold everything together are plastic, but we do have bearings inside, and it all seems to be pretty well built. So the dual lead screws go all the way down to the motors. The frames here are completely metal, which is very nice. We got the brass bushings on both sides. And on this side, we have quite a few more things here to look at. So there is a filament detector. It is plastic. There is an arrow here that's showing the direction. It's like an LED. And what's great is it does have brass inserts to keep it from getting eaten up. But yeah, our filament will come in here and then out into the all metal extruder. Really much nicer than the plastic ones. The extruder motor underneath. All the connectors are hot glued everywhere. And this is our X-axis motor, which runs the X-axis belt for the movement. Going down from there, we can see our stepper motors on the Z-axis and our spool holder that's actually underneath. And you guys saw how I slid it underneath there earlier. Now, again, you can have it either, like this, which actually, now that I look at it, doesn't even line up correctly. So yeah, I think we're gonna slide it to the back and remove this and put it on the other side. And maybe these wires can be tucked around like this. That would make maybe more sense. But now we can have a lot more straight feed to the filament detector. So looking at the very back, we can see here out of the bed, we got the cable and it is strain relief. And instead of running to the back, it actually runs to the side around. So I'm thinking maybe it is possible to tuck all these wires underneath here. So here we have the Y-axis motor, and this runs the bed. It's our belt here. Can't see anything with this cap enclosure. Not even a cutout, which I wish they would have made, but not a big deal. And over here we can see the Y-axis and stop switch. So looking at the very back, we got a pretty good low profile, and this is our power supply. All the ends of the channels are capped with these little plastic covers. Very nice touch. And if you guys remember, this is where we switched our voltage from the 230 to 115. So make sure you don't forget to do that before you power on the printer. Flipping back to the front, as we go down, we can see these pretty cool red accents. And this is the cover for the X-axis motor. And there's a switch here on the side. And this is the X end stop switch. We got a QR code here for most likely the instruction manual. So from the metal extruder, our filament will flow out into the hot end, and this is what the assembly looks like. It's one cover that is plastic, but it's got this really nice little accent here in red on the front. Now there is a CR touch that's pre-installed, which is great to see. And overall, all the wires are nicely routed and just looks great. So I went ahead and took out one little bolt behind the cover, and it all just comes off. We do have the heat break fan right on the cover. Yeah, you guys can see the new style heat break that Creality is using, which looks quite unique. We do have an axial fan for the parts cooling with the injection plastic duct that blows right underneath the nozzle. We also get silicone sock over the heat block. And yeah, everything looks really nicely built and designed. Going from the hot end this way, we can see this is where our belt tensions. And again, we got the red accents. We got the tensioner here. So yeah, it looks really nice. Quite a tasteful little color of red. And going down to the bed, guys, this is probably, the main attraction here, as we got a very large, and you can see my hand here, 300 by 300 glass build plate that's perforated. Let's go ahead. Looks like these just fold out. So this is not meant to be constantly removed, but there's a couple tabs here that open up. And what you do is you just pick it up from the front and then slide it out. You guys can see it's a one large big glass plate, and underneath we have a pretty large aluminum heated slab. So we need to go ahead and peel off this top coating. So yeah, we got a nice Ender logo there, and the bed is perforated so that the coating, let's go ahead and slide it back in. It's just going to go in those clips, and then we're going to lock it in. But yeah, this is kind of like a ultra base style material with little dimples, and whenever the bed heats up, the filament should stick very well, and then when it cools off, the models should just pop off. So yeah, we'll see how well this one works here. So going underneath, you can see that we do have insulation, as that's great to see, as we have a really large glass, so it should help quite a bit with heating up quickly. The frame itself is reasonably thick, and on each corner we have these large adjustable knobs and high quality yellow springs. Let's go and push this out of the way. You guys can see our Y-axis rail, which sticks out quite far past the printer. adjuster here for the Y belt, and it's also in this really cool red color. So over here we got some stickers, QR codes, Creality original filament plans, I don't know what that is all about, and the manufacturing sticker. We can see the name of the printer, power rating of 350 watts, the build size 300 by 320, and the weight of 10.5 kilograms, which is about 23 pounds. So right below that we got the micro SD card slot and also a micro USB connection there. So going around this way, here we have a little storage bin. Actually, it looks pretty cool. We got these little ridges here, and the bin does come out completely, and there's actually a little bit of extra storage here right underneath. So yeah, very nice size, and I'm glad they included a little bin, and you can put all your extra little parts in there and tools from this printer, which keeps it organized. And going to the right side, we have our display controller. So this thing is a pretty nice size. Go ahead and peel this protector. Overall, I do like it, but I wish the bezels were a little smaller here around, but the knob feels nice and premium. And so looking at the side of the screen, you guys see where it plugs in and mounts. And going this way, we can see this is our power input port. It is fused, and our on and off switch. And going to the left side of the printer, not too much to see here, just the spool holder and the wires that come out the side. And we are sitting on 4 large squishy rubber feet that should help with noise and vibrations. So yeah, overall a great design, and what pretty much we're used to from the older Ender-3s, just, you know, slightly upgraded here and there. And the Max having a large volume makes this printer definitely quite more useful, and also love the little touches that they added to this Neo series. So for the next part, let's go ahead and power it on, home the printer, make sure everything works, preheat it, and we'll go ahead and level the bed. All right, so I got the printer plugged in here on the side. Let's go ahead and hit the power switch. Okay, so it took a second there to power up, but it booted up really quick. And the screen is looking really nice. So let's use this rotary knob here to choose prepare, and we'll go ahead and preheat PLA to make sure our nozzle and bed are working. And I'll also go to move. Well, I guess it's gonna home itself, so I wanted to home it, but it's homing just by clicking move. So okay, so it looks like the X and the Y works, and now the Z is coming down, and that BL touch there, or CR touch should I say, should be our Z axis switch. And there it goes. All right, so yeah, looks like everything is working. And if we look at the screen, we can see that our nozzle is preheating and our bed is also preheating 41 now. So let's go ahead and level our bed. You're gonna need some kind of sheet of paper. I'm just gonna use a little Post-it note. So the way this is gonna work is we're gonna manually level the bed first to kind of roughly get it pretty flat. And then we're gonna use the automatic bed leveling. And the reason you wanna manually level it still is because the less it has to compensate as it travels, the better it is. So meaning, like, if your bed is way off, you know, as it travels, it has to really start coming down over here and then back up over there. So a lot of up and down movement if you don't have the bed flat. So where we want to go is to move, and then we're going to move the Z axis. You guys can see it's 10 millimeters down to 0. And it's kind of weird that you have to do this, but that's basically where the nozzle is at the bottom. So what we need to do is disable the steppers. Okay, so it is in prepare, and you guys can see there disable steppers. So once we do that, you're gonna cut the whole mechanism loose. So now what we need to do carefully without pushing down on the nozzle too much is go to every corner by pushing it around. And your bed and nozzle should be preheated. And now we can start to manually level the bed. And we're just gonna go corner to corner manually pushing this thing around. So I had to loosen that one quite a bit. This one was kind of already tight. Now we'll push the bed to go to that corner, and now to this one. So yeah, you just want to go around corner to corner at least 3 times or so, because once you change one corner, all the other ones kind of change. So that's why you need to go a few times. It's kind of unfortunate that Creality didn't build in a corner to corner traveling software, because that would sure make it a lot easier moving around. So all right, so I think I am getting closer here as we're just micro adjusting at this point. All right, so we can go ahead and go to the level button here, or this dedicated leveling, and what that's going to do is going to go through the whole bed and probe it, and then save the offsets in memory, so as it's printing it can compensate. All right, so it looks like it takes 5 points across, and it's probably going to be 5 points down. So it looks like we're going to have 25 offset parameters that it can go off, which is really nice to see. Usually it's 16 or so, but because it's a larger bed, it makes sense. All right, so it looks like it's finished. and it goes back to the main menu, and you guys can see that it actually auto dims. So after a little bit of not touching the knob, it dims the display, which is pretty cool. I guess it helps the life of the screen. So yeah, the last thing we need to do is go to prepare and set the Z-axis offset. But actually, before we do that, we have to move it back down to 0 again. Okay, so it is at 0 right now. So let's hit the offset and we'll see how much we need to go down. Looks like quite a bit on mine here. So I got minus 2.15, looks like it's pretty good for me. So you want it to slightly drag, but because I'm using a really thin sheet, I basically have almost no drag. So simple as that. After you set it, you're pretty much done with the out of bed leveling. So let's go ahead and install some filament. And I got some red that actually matches the theme of the printer. We'll start with that. So yeah, we're gonna go on the spool holder here. Make sure you cut your filament on an angle so you can go through the detector, which by the way, there's a little light there that glows blue. It's gonna go into the extruder, and we're gonna push on the extruder arm and then kind of feed it manually all the way through. And you can maybe see it go through the PTFE tubing, and then it's gonna come out the other end, or the hot end. Disable the steppers. It looks like there was a little bit of yellow in there. So let's go ahead and grab our micro SD card, and it is an 8 gig. It plugs here up front. Looks like upside down. I'm gonna put the adapter in the drawer. And if we go to print, we can see we got a couple of G-codes that are samples that are included on the SD card. So we can print either a rabbit or a boat. Now before we print, let's go ahead and go over this UI. On top we can see it says main, so this is the main page. We got the logo, we got a print, prepare, control, and level. So the print reads the SD card. The prepare is all of your controls like move, disable steppers, out of home, Z-axis offset, preheat, PLA, ABS, cool down, and then language selection. So let's go back. Control is going to be our temperature controls, motion controls, store configuration, rig configuration, and reset configuration. And then also we got info about the printer. So I'm not going to go through all of this, but I'm just kind of give you an overview real quick here. And then we got our leveling option. And down here we have the nozzle temperature and the target, also the bed temperature and the target underneath, the flow rate, which is at 100, and the extruder at 100, the fan speed, and the Z-axis offset. As we know, we have minus 2.15 right now. And down here we have X, Y, and Z coordinates. So since it's not in process, they're all just kind of blinking. But yeah, it's pretty simple and intuitive UI. And if you ever used the Creality here recently, this is pretty much the same thing. All right, so let's go ahead and do, I guess, the rabbit since it's first. We'll do a red rabbit. And it starts the print. And we'll go through this menu as we're printing here in a second. All right, there it goes. Grab that blob there. Now let's see if our offset is good. And yeah, right off the bat, looks like it's pretty much perfect. What I could tell. All right, well, nice. Very happy about that. As you guys can see, the offset was just right. And this is one of the things I love about Creality printers, is that it just works, seems like. So far, my experience has been great with pretty much every machine. So let's go back to the display here and check out the options as we're printing. So we got the G-code name up there, rabbit. We got a progress bar, which is at 0% right now. Printing time that has passed since we started. Remaining is still at nothing because it's either calculating or maybe just doesn't know. And then over here, we have 3 options. We got tune, pause, and stop. So stop is gonna completely cancel the print. Pause is just gonna pause it. And then if we click on tune, we can adjust our print speed, our nozzle temperature, our bed temperature, and our fan speed. It's at 0 right now, but I'm sure it'll kick in after a few layers. And also, quite important, we can do Z-axis offset as it's printing. So if you need to go a little up or down, you can do that right on the fly. You can fine tune it real quick. Yeah, pretty good intuitive options. And down here, we have all of the main things that we need to see always on the bottom, which is great that they did it that way. All right, so yeah, everything looks good with the print, and pretty cool how we just got it right off the bat, printing perfectly down on the bed. So as it's printing here, I have to say that the printer does have quite a bit of sound noise, but the steppers are pretty much silent, or the motor. So yeah, you can't hear no motor sound, but so I'm gonna bring my microphone in if you guys can hear it. So not terrible, but I'd rather hear fan sound because it's just kind of like a hum than, you know, stepper motors making motion sounds back and forth, which gets quite annoying, especially if you're using it late at night or in a place where you're doing other things. And also I just heard the parts cooling fan just kicked in and it got even louder. So yeah, there is quite a lot of fan sound. So we're gonna go ahead and print this thing out and see what comes out, and maybe I'll print the other file also and we'll see what they look like. Alright, so we printed out the bunny and it looks like the boat was a benchy. So let's go ahead and take a look at the bunny first. So right off the bat, the first thing I'm noticing is how smooth the layers went down. Usually Creality does a great job, and that's no exception here for the MAX Neo. So yeah, looks like that's our Z seam there. We do have a little bit of artifacts there, or ghosting maybe. You can kind of see it there on the body. The bottom looks excellent, and on the front here you guys can see on the reflections how well the layers are sitting. So we did have a little bit of blobbing between the ears, but not bad at all. Pretty easy to clean up there. And overall, guys, very impressed with our first print. So the benchy is still stuck on the bed and it is completely cooled off. Let's see how easy it pops off. And look at that, pretty easy. That's what's great about these kind of beds, is when they're hot, it really sticks well. And then when it cools off, and even though you do have to wait till it cools off, that's the downside. Now you can pull the plate off and cool it faster by laying it on something cool like a table, but that's not super convenient. But yeah, when it does cool off, it seems to pop off really good. All right, so here we have the benchy. So let's start from the bottom here. It'll be a little hard to see on red, but we can still see the reflections. So yeah, you guys can see how nice the bottoms are. And the bed leaves a nice little imprint. So let's look at the walls. Very clean overall and uniform. We got a little bit of artifacts and also some ghosting there. You can kind of see the ghosting. Not terrible, but it is there. You guys can kind of see the vibrations there. So that's actually the y-axis, and the bed is quite heavy and large, and it's glass. I mean, we can play around with the belts maybe a little bit and loosen them or tighten them, but yeah, we're gonna have a little bit of vibrations there because of the weight. As far as cooling, it looks good on the overhangs there, and yeah, it just looks like a really good print. So yeah, very happy with our first two prints, and Creality provided great start samples here, but what we need to do is slice our own prints to really see how well this printer prints. All right, so here we are at the computer and I got the SD card plugged in. So let's go ahead and open it up. So we got 3 files in there. Looks like a couple G codes, which we printed, the boat and the rabbit. And also we have RAR file. I guess this needs to be extracted, but I am on Mac and it appears that maybe it's not pulling it up. So it's not even working for me. But in any case, this probably will work on Windows and includes digital form of the manual and maybe the slicer, things like that. So let's go ahead and open up Cura. And this is the slicing software that I use. So Creality has their own, or you can use whatever slicer you want. So right now we're on Ender-3 Pro. Let's go ahead and create a new profile just for this printer. And by the way, we are using the latest version of Cura, which is 5.0. And yeah, it's supposed to be quite a bit better. So let's go ahead and try that out with this new printer. And everything looks a little different than I'm used to, but I'm sure we'll figure it out. So when you first download it, it'll probably take you to this Add Printer menu. And what we're going to do is click on non-network printers, and then we're going to go find Creality, and here we can see all of the printers that are available. So let's go ahead and go with the Ender-3 MAX. So I'm just going to rename it here to just Ender-3 MAX, and I'll put Neo in there. We'll click add, and here we can see the parameters. So the only thing we need to change here is the Z height of 320 instead of 340, and everything else should be good. We'll click on next, and here we can see the build volume of our printer. So let's go ahead and drag something in there. We'll do a benchy, zoom in a bit here. So if we click on it, we can just drag it around when selected. Also, you got these little arrows to move it around on the axes. Or here on the side, you guys can see we got hot buttons of move, and you can put in the parameters here, and then scale. You can scale the model, or you can just grab one of these points and pull them around and scale it like that. And you can also rotate here. So yeah, these are pretty much the basic options, and you got more advanced ones here. So we're not going to be going in too much detail. We'll just quickly go over how to slice. So more importantly, over here on the top, click on this profile standard quality. And here we can adjust all of the parameters. So let's go ahead and go over real quick of how I set mine up. So if you click these three little arrows here, you can choose between custom, basic, advanced, expert. So normally advanced is what I use, and you can get quite detailed if you go to expert, which there is one thing we need to change in expert, and we'll get back to that in a second. But we're going to use advanced, and starting here with the quality layer height, we'll leave that at 0.2, and everything looks good here. Under walls, we want to change the wall count to 3. Under top bottom, we want to change the top layers to 5. Infill at 20 is good. Under material, this is where we can set our printing temperatures, and I'm going to leave everything the way it is here. Print speed at 50 is what I usually print at. The only thing I like to change is the initial layer speed to 15. Go a little slower on the first layer, and also the skirt and brim to 25 to speed it up. Everything else we're going to leave the way it is. So here we have retractions, and I'm not going to touch this because this is about usually what works. Sometimes you have to go a little up here, maybe 7 to 7.5, and sometimes you can go lower depending on the temperatures, materials, things like that. So you can play around with it. Cooling is good. Here we have the support button, so if you're going to mess with supports, you can do it here. And then we have build adhesion, so we're on skirt, this is where I like it. So this is going to print a few lines around the print and then print the print itself. You also have brim, and this is going to actually touch the print, bigger area to grab to. So if you're having a problem sticking to the bed, you can try using brim. And then you got Raft, which will build a whole raft underneath the model. And I normally do not like using this as it wastes time and material. So skirt is the best way for most prints, as it will print straight to the build plate. So the only other thing that we will try out also is spiralized mode, and that just prints a few layers on the bottom and then one layer all around in a continuous motion. So we'll see how that works out with this printer. But yeah, other than that, guys, that's pretty much everything here. And obviously you can adjust this to, your liking and whatnot else. Now, if we click here on these dots and go to expert, and under travel, which is where our retractions are, there is an option here called retract before outer wall. So I like to turn this off. The reason I like to turn it off because when it retracts too much on smaller areas, like around the benchy here where it has to retract a lot, around all these windows and openings, it tends to not do very well and have under extrusion. So yeah, this helps with that. If you're having a lot of under extrusions where there's a lot of retractions, try unclicking this retract before outer wall, at least what I noticed on my prints here. But yeah, I'm just going to set this back to advanced so we don't get mixed up with anything. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the profile. Pretty simple, nothing too complicated. So after that, we're going to click the slice button, and it's going to slice, and it says it's going to take 1 hour and 59 minutes, which actually is pretty reasonably quick. So we can go ahead and click save to removable since our SD card is in the computer and it sees it. And that's going to save, and you can eject it from here, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to right click and clear build plate, and we'll also throw a calibration cube in here, push it back just a little bit, and we'll slice it the same way, and that's going to only take 36 minutes. And we'll go ahead and save that. And now we can eject the file and take our SD card to the printer and print these models out. So yeah, guys, as you can see, not too hard to use, and hopefully this little quick overview here was helpful. Alright, so our benchy and calibration cube are printed out, and I do have to say they did turn out pretty good. Let's go ahead and look at calibration cube first. Overall looks great. Very minimum kind of vibrations or layering. We do have a very slight ghosting on the X, but minor. Trying to get you guys a couple different lightings here. The Y, so we had a little bit more vibration and quite a bit of ghosting, and that's understandable for this huge bed. So even though it's there, it's not too bad. We got the X wall and the Y wall. So overall, really nice even print, the bottom and the top. Yeah, very solid and quite respectable for Creality here. So the benchy is still stuck on the build plate, and I have to say this material here has been working very well. It's sticking while it's hot and popping off quite easy when it's cooled off. So let's go ahead and see how easy this benchy comes off. Perfect every time. Now it does have to get pretty much cold. You do have to be a little patient and let it cool off. Alright, so for the benchy, well, let's look at the bottom here first. So yeah, it looks beautiful. Walls. Very nice. Look how even that is. Creality printers do not disappoint in this area. They're very accurate, and the layers go down very even. Now we do have some vibration and ghosting, but seems a little less than our other print. Oh, it is there right there, yeah. So it's still kind of there. But yeah, overall very, very nice the way the layers sit. We did have a little bit of stringing. Overhangs look good around the arches. The walls look pretty decent, except for a few places here, and it's actually where it's kind of stringy, and it makes sense. It has to retract a lot in this area, because it prints a little and then retracts and has to move over, and this is why that area there is not perfect. The box in the back looks great, and the chimney here also looks pretty much perfect. So yeah, I'd have to say definitely above average as far as print quality goes, and pretty much average for Creality printers. So for the next part, I'm going to print out more models. I'm also going to try to print something large, and we'll see how well all our leveling works and the compensations. And I'll also try to do some spiralized mode, and we'll see if this printer is capable of that. Alright guys, so yeah, these are all the prints that we printed, and I have to say the printer actually performs very nicely, and I kind of expected that from Creality, as you know, these are all pretty familiar designs and parts from earlier printers. Overall, it's executed very well, and you get pretty much everything you would want in a 3D printer. So we've seen the rabbit and the benchy that came with the printer, also the black benchy calibration cube. So let's go ahead and go to this frog, which by the way turned out really nice, and this is a silky gold, I guess, kind of color, so it is quite reflective. So the bottoms stick really nice, there's no issues there. Overhang is good. So the thing about this print, it's pretty detailed around these little paws here, and yeah, as in usual Creality fashion, we have really nice, accurate, beautiful print. There was a tiny bit of stringing between the eyes, but nothing huge. And by the way, all of the prints were printed with 0.2 layer height, 200 on the nozzle, 60 on the bed at 50 millimeters a second. So the next print we got here is a Squirtle, and I guess this is kind of like a turtle mixed with a squirrel. It's kind of like a polygon, so there's a lot of flat surfaces, and here you can kind of see how the printer does. There is a little bit of ringing. Not bad at all. And yeah, overall the layers are sitting very nicely. Great around the face here, the eyes, and looks pretty awesome overall. So this here is actually a gear, is what it's called, and it is a functional print. Now it is frozen up right now, and there's a little bit of stringing inside. I don't know how well you guys can see. So this tests the tolerances and the accuracy. So I can't turn it by hand. I'm going to grab this Allen wrench and we're going to stick it in there, see how easy it goes in first. So yeah, perfect fit. Let's see how easy this thing will go. And yeah, that went perfectly with not much force. And because there is a little bit of stringing, and it's probably mostly because of this filament, we can kind of break it up here by just turning it. And when I spin it, there's no bumping or grabbing or like an oval kind of feeling where it's getting tighter, looser, tighter, looser. So this is a good sign of good accuracy, and everything is round and all the gears are round or symmetrical. So now that we've spun it a few times, we can easily spin it by hand, as you guys can see. So yeah, did an excellent job here with the gear. So quite obvious here, we have large octopus. This thing turned out pretty awesome. So as you guys can see, there's a lot of tentacles, and they're all in these little pieces, and they kind of all combine, and then they're, you know, functional somewhat. So what's great about this print is we've tested a few things, as how well is the level on the bed. Because this print stretches from end to end, when it printed all the way on one side, it had the perfect gap between the nozzle and the bed on the other side, and also including in all the other places. So yeah, the leveling system works perfect, and just proves how well a glass bed with out of bed leveling with the Sierra Touch works together. And also another thing to mention is that the print stuck to the bed very well, but then when it cooled off, I was able to just pop it off with my hands. I didn't have to do anything special. Now it does leave small marks on the bed, and it looks like almost like residue of some sort, but it doesn't seem to be affecting the sticking or the print at all, and it's not too close to the bed. It's just for some reason whatever coating's on here, after the hot filament goes on it, it leaves like a slight mark on it. But yeah, if we look at this guy here up close, everything is even and clean. Not much stringing or blobbing at all, which was impressive. And that's gonna, you know, depend a lot on your filament also. Really nice even layering here. Yeah, we do still have a support here we can break off. All right, there we go. So this octopus was scaled up quite a bit from its original size, but yeah, very cool, and it looks great overall, I would say. And again, I was very impressed that I was able to print it on the full X and Y axes with no issues whatsoever. So for the last two prints, we have a Astronaut and his Spaceship, or I guess this is more like a plane chip. So the Astronaut was printed in kind of like a gray metal look filament. It's not the best I got, but it does produce like a nice metallic finish. The only issue is it's not always super consistent, and we can kind of see that in the layerings. I don't think it's so much the printer as the filament. I would like to see this part being a little smoother. But other than that, everything looks great, and even under the hands here, very good cooling. Usually this part gets pretty bad on most printers. We barely had anything to grab onto. Now we did have a little mess up here, but yeah, nothing too major. It's still all worked out and stuck to the build plate, and we were able to print it out. And so for the last print, we have the Spaceship, which is still stuck to the build plate. And this is in spiralized mode, which is a few layers on the bottom and then just one layer all the way around. So it's hollow and thin. Let's see how easy it comes off. So it's not coming off super easy. Okay, there we go. And it's quite fragile. If you bend it, you could, crack it in half. So yeah, as you guys saw, it came off really easy. And yeah, look at that bottom. It looks great. And yeah, if we look at the sides here, the layers are sitting very nicely. Now there is something a little bit weird right here, here, and here. Not sure what that is. The rest of the print is nice and smooth and there's no issues. If we look at the actual body here, you guys can see how well those layers are sitting. Very smooth and perfect. So yeah, very impressive and definitely better than most printers by quite a lot. And if we go to the point here, we can see it's not really melted and looks really good. And by the way, guys, this is 320 millimeters tall from the bottom to the top. And what I noticed is actually on this printer, you can go another 15 to 20 millimeters higher than that. So I think realistically, it's more like 340, a little more than they advertised for the Z-axis height. But yeah, guys, overall, I'm really impressed with this printer, and kind of at the same time was expecting exactly this, a great experience, great print quality, and just very easy and friendly to use overall. Now, one of the things that I did not really like is the spool holder. It's really flimsy and jumps around, and because it's not level, the spool keeps wanting to kind of drift down. So yeah, I feel like they could do something better about the spool holder, even though I like the function of it. It's not as stable or as straight as you would want it. And another thing that's a little annoying is that when you are finished with the print, you have to wait till the build plate completely cools off until you can try to pry it off. Now you can try to pry it off earlier, but you have a high chance of breaking your model because it's sticking really good when it's still warm. So you have to kind of wait till it's stone cold, and that could take quite a while. So yeah, and pulling off the build plate every time is not ideal. And the other thing I would say that maybe is a little bit a nuisance could be is the pretty loud fan noises. The fans are running at full speed and making quite a bit of sound, and it's not terrible, but I wish they were a bit quieter. But other than that, there's just positives about this thing. Starting with our build volume, very large, 300 by 300 by 320 is quite awesome. Dual Z axes tethered on the top with the belt, all metal extruder. We also have the filament detector, CR touch for the bed leveling, quiet stepper drivers, TMC 2208s. I love this little cubby door here for storage. The screen is clear and easy to use with this knob. And not to mention, they're pretty cool look with these little red accents here and there. So yeah, overall, I really like this printer, mechanically, aesthetically, and it's definitely a winner if you want something from Creality with this kind of volume. So if you guys are interested, I'm going to have some links in the description. Check it out. And if you did enjoy this video, then hit that like button. If you want to see more videos like this and other things I do on this channel, stay tuned. And also check out my other 3D printing videos, and I think you'll find something interesting there. So as always, guys, thanks for watching this channel, and I hope to see you on the next video. Peace.